Maintenant, notre magicien masqué va faire de son assistante la femme la plus forte du monde. Il va transformer ses bras en acier. Afin de métamorphoser ce corps fait de chair et de sang en acier, il l'hypnotise. Elle fixe le pendule de cristal. On a l'impression qu'elle est sous l'emprise d'un sortilège. Et soudainement, elle s'endort. Le magicien contrôle maintenant totalement son esprit et son corps. Ses muscles sont parfaitement relâchés, mais plus pour très longtemps. À son signal, le bras de son assistante se lève. Désormais, il utilise ses pouvoirs pour lui insuffler une force surhumaine. C'est incroyable, elle peut supporter tout le poids du magicien sur un seul bras. Il répète le même procédé avec l'autre bras. Encore une fois, il s'appuie sur son bras pour se soulever du sol. Il vérifie qu'elle est encore sous hypnose, puis il fait entrer ses deux autres complices. Elle grimpe sur un escabeau et s'apprête à faire subir à notre femme d'acier le test ultime. C'est impressionnant, elle est capable de porter sur ses bras le poids de 2 femmes. Est-ce vraiment la femme la plus forte du monde? Je ne parierais pas à votre place.
The magician enters and shows us 3 identical steel structures. He wants us to watch carefully as he enters the first one. Next, he calls in one of his assistants. Where would he be without them? She walks around the structure and then joins him inside. But this isn't what it looks like. The girl grabs the magician's wrist and secures him with a length of rope. Another wrist and another line. Looks like the masked magician is going to be tied up for the evening. Nice job, young lady. She certainly knows the ropes. The other assistants join the party and close the doors in front of the magician. And the doors to the other structure. The girl climbs into the center structure and prepares for something magical to happen. With a wave of her arms, she causes the 2 end structures to rise. Next, she lifts a sheet in front of herself. She raises it once, then twice. What's this? The magician has somehow escaped his bonds and taken her place. The doors to his structure open, but we already knew he wasn't in there. Now for the doors on the other structure. And there's the girl. teleported by magic. An amazing illusion, but you know there must be secrets.
Coming up, the masked magician will reveal the astounding secret behind his incredible teleportation.
Tonight's first illusion demonstrates the magician's power to convince the audience he can make his assistants come and go at will. Here are two of them now. So far, he's delivered on half of his promise. At his request, they covered this ordinary table with a large sheet. We could see that there was nothing below. Using a chair, the magician steps up onto the table to prove that there is nothing above. He lures in another girl to join him on the tabletop. This guy's got the magic touch. One of the assistants hands him the chair, which he places in the center of the table. He then orders the girl to sit down in the chair, and he quickly places her under his spell. The other assistants return with yet another sheet. The magician tells us to watch as he lifts the sheet in front of the girl. Again, we can see that there is nothing below the table. But now, we can't see the girl. He whisks away the sheet, and she's gone. Pity. She was starting to grow on me. The other assistants help him remove the chair, and we can see that she's really gone. This is one vanish that is going to be difficult to explain. Now they remove the sheet from the tabletop. Again, we can see underneath the table that the girl is nowhere to be found. And that's the easy way to make the ladies come and go. For centuries, magicians have been making audiences believe that they have mastered the art of levitation. Tonight, the masked magician proves yet again that it's all one big trick. His beautiful lady is all dressed up, but she's got nowhere to go. He wants her right where she is, on this ordinary wooden plank. She dutifully stretches out on the plank and makes herself comfortable. But one girl isn't enough for our masked man, so he calls in some backup. His assistant removes the center pedestal from beneath the plank so that it's now supported only by the two chairs. Looks like it can hold her. Another assistant joins the party, and they all engage in some mystical movements. Guess this puts him in the mood. On his command, the two assistants remove the chairs, leaving the plank and the lady suspended in midair. It's as if she's floating on a cloud, made of solid oak. The magician waves his arms above her to prove that there are no hidden wires. And now the camera will travel all the way around back to prove that there's nothing supporting her from the rear. This levitation is impossible to explain. The magician keeps waving his arms, and yes, she and the wood plank are still floating. He calls the other assistants back in, and they replace the two chairs. Next, he beckons for the center pedestal. When it's in place, he makes a few more passes to awaken Sleeping Beauty. She's pretty when she just wakes up. And there you have it. One of the oldest tricks in the book. But what's the secret? The magician has something dangerous in store for us, using this large circular contraption. No, it's not an industrial washing machine or an overgrown donut. It's actually a torture device with a potentially lethal twist. You can see that a table bisects the contraption. There's nothing above or below, as the magician is willing to prove. And since he's probably a bit too stout to fit inside that ring of terror, he calls in one of his lovely assistants. Cute outfit. And the ponytail is a nice touch. Let's hope she looks as good when he gets through with her. His team of assistants enters and quickly goes to work. The two male assistants lift the girl onto the table, while the two women prepare to secure her inside the ring. Meanwhile, the magician stands by, ready to take all of the credit. Now that the girl is in position, we can see that her head and ponytail protrude from one side of the ring and her feet hang out the other. Whatever he has in mind, this guy's pretty kinky. And he goes for girls with bare feet. This illusion is more telling than I expected. If there are any psychiatrists in the audience, I bet you could have a field day with the masked man. He places the girl in a trance. The lovely lady is at his mercy. And it's too bad for her because he's now holding a very sharp blade made of surgical steel. Maybe she should have read the fine print in her contract before getting into that thing. The blade goes into the device and through the girl just above the knee. Told you he was kinky. But he's not done. A second blade is now inserted straight through her torso. For those of you scoring at home, she's now divided in 3 sections. But she hasn't lost all motor skills. Her feet are still moving. The magician directs 2 of his assistants to do more of his dirty work. The device is now rotated a quarter turn, separating the girl's head and feet from her midsection. For a girl who's completely gone to pieces, she doesn't seem to mind. Maybe her ponytail is too tight. Better put her back together before she realizes something is up. That shouldn't be. She's lowered back to a more appropriate horizontal position, but the magician will leave it up to her to put her life back together. This illusion is one of the classics of magic, dating back more than 100 years. The magician enters and examines this empty 4-legged wooden frame. From the round top, he lowers a chain. Next, his beautiful assistants wheel in a clothing rack filled with costumes, though most of their wardrobe could probably fit in a coin purse. One of his assistants makes a selection, a suitably seductive 2-piece number and a pair of heels. The magician now hangs the costume from the chain as his assistants bring in a large hooded cloak. Kind of an extreme contrast in clothing, but whatever. I'm sure it's part of his plan. As they attach the cloak to the frame, a ghostly mannequin head is introduced. Creepy. Once the cloak is in place, the magician sets the head on top of the frame. The cloak's hood is pulled up and over the head. and the assistants spin the entire frame. How about that? The mannequin has transformed into another beautiful girl, dressed in a sexy two-piece. That's one way to find a date for a Saturday night. But there's a secret to how he did it. First up tonight, the magician will demonstrate a classic illusion that has been performed on television countless times and in live performances all over the world. His assistants do a little dance to get us in the mood. Good job. But no matter how talented they are, he can always use one more. Here she is. Nice. She steps up onto the chair and reclines on a board that is resting between two other chairs. Now another assistant enters. This one is apparently repossessing the furniture. The magician places the girl in a trance as his other assistants wrap her in a sheet that was hanging down from the board. Nighty-night. Beneath the board, we can see that the magician is standing on a raised platform so we can see him work his magic. He does some conjuring, and the girl rises. The assistants remove the chairs that were supporting the board. She's floating in mid-air. Slowly, the girl continues to rise. The magician motions, and one of the assistants returns with a stainless steel hoop. The magician passes the hoop around the girl once to prove that there are no wires or other supports. She's really floating in the air by magic. He passes the hoop around her a second time, just to be sure, before the assistant takes it away. Now the magician commands the girl in the air to float back down. This is amazing. And we can see there are no wires. He asks the two assistants to return with the chairs. They place them beneath the board just in time to catch it before it floats all the way to the ground. The sheet is removed, and there you have it. A beautiful girl who can levitate by magic. Here's an illusion that dates back to the early 1900s. There are photos of Houdini's contemporaries like Howard Thurston performing the original version of this classic trick. The magician shows us an oddly shaped cabinet. He walks around to give us the view from all sides. It looks just large enough to contain a human being. The magician calls in his beautiful assistants, and one of them hands him a very sharp steel blade. Seems solid enough. Now for another. Smaller, but just as sharp, solid, and menacing. She'll save them for later use. The magician gets some help opening the cabinet. We can pretty much imagine what's going to happen next. Well, there's a switch. Instead of one of the girls, the magician has climbed inside. An assistant secures his neck with a steel strap. Next, a metal bar is lowered and two steel plates secure his legs. They really don't want him to escape. The doors in front of his head are closed, along with the main doors of the cabinet. The assistants now rotate the box so that we can see that the magician has not sneaked out through the back. Next, the girl with the sharp blades slides the smaller one into the cabinet at neck height, separating the magician's head from the rest of his body. There's a painful razor burn. Now for the large blade. She slides it into the box at the magician's waist. After a bit of a struggle. That's one way to reduce your metal. No pain, no gain. We can still see his legs, so we know he hasn't escaped from the cabinet or from serious injury. Yep, there's his head. But his torso has completely vanished. The girls open the doors on each side, and now the back. Gone. His legs are still there, no middle. Then his head. Looks like only part of him got out in time. But where did he go? And is the rest coming back? The doors are closed back up again so we don't have to look at this ghoulish mess. Now the blades are removed. First the big one, then the one at his neck. She's good at this. The cabinet goes for another spin so we can see that there is nothing tricky going on in the back. Let's look inside. There's his head, and his middle is returned. The metal fasteners are removed and the magician steps out. Still alive and showing no ill effects. Just like magic. But you know there's a secret. Here's an updated version of a baffling illusion that has been performed since the days of Houdini. Let's see what the magician intends to do with this large contraption. He walks around the box and sizes it up. I'm sure he's thinking one of his lovely assistants would fit nicely. Let's look inside. He opens the door and... vertical stripes, how slimming. He calls in one of his assistants. She looks slender enough to fit inside. And the right height, too. He lowers the top of the box over her head and gives us one last look at her torso. He locks her legs into place, then closes the front of the box. This is a brave girl. But he throws in some hypnotic hand waves just in case. Next, he swivels the head box, first to her right, then to the left. Now back and forth. She's playing along, but I guess she really has no choice. Incredible! A full revolution. She's still smiling. And another. And she doesn't look a bit dizzy. Let's see what effect this has had on her. Now that is twisted. The magician closes up the box. I hope he intends to put her back the way she was. In this condition, she's kind of hard to shop for. A couple of revolutions in the other direction. Is it me, or does she look relieved? I know I would be. He opens the box. And out she steps. No worse for the wear. And she wears it well. For his next illusion, the magician will employ this curious-looking device that has a long plunger on one end. Resting on a thin table, this large box is shown to be completely empty. Both the front and back sides are open, so we can see everything. The magician calls in one of his beautiful assistants. Looking at her costume, we can almost see everything. He wants us to take a good look at the girl because she's about to get inside that box. A perfect fit, just like her costume. The magician calls in his other assistants and the fun begins. They draw shades in the back and the front of the box and secure them to the face of the plunger. The line drawing on the front is a fair depiction of the girl inside with a little artistic license here and there. We get the idea. He hands the girl a red silk handkerchief as a lovely parting gift. Whenever a girl gets into a magical box, we can assume something is about to happen to her. As she continues to wave bye-bye, the magician backs up to the end of the plunger. Without warning, he pushes the plunger forward, presumably crushing everything in its path. But the girl is still waving. There's barely enough room for her inside. She pulls the handkerchief into the box, and the magician pushes the plunger all the way forward, completely crushing the girl. As we can see, there is nothing left inside the box except for the long plunger. The girl has been completely flattened. Her lovely co-workers don't seem to mind. Catty. The magician withdraws the plunger, and we can see that nothing untoward has happened to the line drawing of the girl. But will her amazing lines fare so well? The assistants rotate the box so we can see that the shade and back has also been restored to its original condition. And now to get a look inside. He gives a magical wave and commands one of the assistants to open the shade. There's the girl, and she's not the least bit flattened. Another incredible illusion that demands a credible explanation. And now, the magician will perform another classic illusion, one of the most famous in all of magic. He displays an ornate chair that's perched atop a platform. He walks around the chair to make sure we get a good look at it. The magician then calls in one of his beautiful assistants so we can get a good look at her. This guy's got it made. Ever the gentleman, he helps her step up onto the platform where she takes her position in the chair, just like a beauty queen on her throne. Two more assistants enter with a large sheet. I think we've seen enough of the magician to know that something magical happens when he gets his girls under the sheets. The assistants raise the sheet for a moment. There's the girl still in the chair. He can't resist seeing her one last time. I don't blame him. The sheet goes back up, and the assistants cover the girl. There she is, still in the chair. magical wave, some lightning, and she's gone. Vanished in an instant, leaving behind the lone masked man and his fancy chair. Maybe he should sit down and rethink this trick. The magician is about to stare death in the face in the form of this imposing guillotine. Once used to behead dangerous killers, lawbreakers, and the wives of kings, the guillotine gained its gruesome infamy during the French Revolution. But that's enough of a history lesson. Tonight, the magician hopes to survive before he's history. He examines the execution device with its razor-sharp blade, which is designed to cleanly sever the head from an unfortunate body. To ensure a clean cut, the neck of the victim is held in place by this heavy wooden stock. Anyone who would get into a device like this voluntarily has to have confidence in his powers of escape, or a death wish. Let's hope the girls know how to do the rest of his tricks. If this is going to be his swan song, what a way to go. The magician climbs up onto the table and bends down as the assistants raise the stock. He places his head through the hole so that his neck can be trapped between the wooden planks. Meanwhile, another assistant is securing his legs to the table with thick leather straps. The straps will hold the magician in place in case he has a last-minute change of heart. It will also prevent his body from flying off the table in the event the blade hits its target. Of course, all of these restraints will make his escape near impossible, and that much more dangerous. Remember, a magician is a world-class professional. Don't try any of his dangerous illusions at home. With the wooden stocks in place and the leather straps cinched tightly around his body, it's time for the magician to begin his escape. That deadly blade is looming just a few feet from his neck. So why isn't he struggling to escape? Maybe he has a death wish after all. Let's watch. It's now or never. Oh no, he didn't get out. That wasn't supposed to happen. This is getting more grisly by the second. As the assistants cover his lifeless body with a sheet, one of the girls places his lifeless head on the table. Maybe it's not so lifeless after all. Next, the magician has an illusion that's been baffling audiences for decades. Let's see if it will fool cultured, contemporary eyes. Sitting atop four legs is a fancy cabinet with a curtain across the front. When the curtain is opened, we can see that it appears empty. As we take a look around to the other side, we see that the back is also covered by a curtain. With both of them pulled open, we can see straight through the cabinet. Aside from the magician, there's nothing inside. Knowing how magic works, we can assume that this is only a temporary condition. Right on cue, two of his lovely assistants enter to lend a hand and, as always, some eye candy. This guy sure knows how to peck 'em. Back to the trick. The curtains are drawn and the magician cues the assistants to take the box for a little spin on the floor. This is usually when the magic happens. The front curtain is opened up, and yep, I was right. A bouquet of flowers. Not the most elaborate bouquet. Then again, the delivery was pretty fast. But the magician isn't satisfied with them, so he puts them back in the box. The curtain is drawn, and he gives the signal for the girls to rotate the box again. They're getting a workout tonight. It's time to open the curtain again to see what's up next. And look at this. Another beautiful girl. Maybe that's where he gets them. And she seems delighted by that pathetic bouquet. Just imagine what she would do if he gave her some roses. The curtain is drawn once again, depriving us of the view of the girl inside. The assistants go back into the routine while the magician makes his patented hand gestures. Let's see what's going to happen this time. A magical wave and there's the bouquet. Not exactly a great trick. Maybe she didn't like them after all. Let's take a look behind the curtain. The girl has vanished without a trace. Perhaps he should have sprung for the roses, or maybe even a ring. Well, he still has the other two, and that seems like more than enough for him to handle. This classic illusion is called the assistant's revenge. You'll find out why in a minute. The magician begins by showing off his latest restraining device. This one resembles an upright wooden rack. It's got a stock for the neck and heavy leather straps with chrome buckles to confine its victim. But the magician's not going to restrain himself, not when he's got pretty girls around. He calls in one of his lovely assistants and charms her into obediently stepping into place. Looks like she's done this kind of thing before. With her hands up against the stocks, the magician begins to secure her to the rack with the leather straps. She's not struggling, so he must be doing something right. He certainly has a way with leather. Now for the waist. He cinches this strap tight. 2 more to go. Next, he heads below the belt. Ouch, this one is even tighter than her skirt. Still, she doesn't seem to mind. One last strap to go to secure her legs, though she doesn't look like the runaway bride type. He checks the straps one more time, then goes for the headstock. This updated version of the medieval restraining device will prevent her neck and hands from any sudden movements. Just to be sure, the magician padlocks this front stock into place. And you thought your boss was tough. When the magician's assistants say they are all tied up at work, they mean it. But this is the glamour of showbiz. Once he's satisfied his assistant's not able to escape, he pulls a curtain that's designed to encircle the entire contraption. What's this? The curtain's still moving, only the girl is pulling it, and the magician is now locked inside the device. Good for her. Now you know why this illusion is called the assistant's revenge. Bye-bye, masked man. Let's see you get out of this one. The magician has a trick that is perfect for a first date, Valentine's Day, or any time you want to say I love you with flowers. All he needs are a beautiful girl in extremely tight pants. And of course, a rose. She just happens to have one on that old-fashioned cigarette tray. Gotta love a girl who doesn't smoke and brings her own flower. In Hollywood, she's a total catch. Well, the magician has the flower and the girl. Now, what does he have in mind? From the look on her face, you can tell that she hopes his intentions are honorable. But she knows the masked man all too well. She's a brave girl to let him approach from behind. Maybe his magical trances really work. What's this? He's plunged the rose straight through her back and out through her stomach. That's one way to touch a girl's heart. Though for this much grief, she'd probably prefer jewelry. Now that his hand is out, she appears to be quite relieved and stunning as ever. But we're not letting him get away before he reveals the secrets. So how did the magician impale the girl with the rose, then remove the flower without incident? You've been looking at the secret all along. First up tonight, the magician has a mysterious illusion using the old steamer trunk of the late, great Harry Houdini. He'll also use this empty wooden frame. We can see through it. And we can see that it's hinged along one side to form a sturdy support. Next, he calls in two of his beautiful assistants and asks for their support. They pick up a heavy wooden triangle that fits securely on the frame. Once it's in place, the triangle and frame form a low table. Thanks for the heavy lifting, girls. Your work here is done. For now. Now for Houdini's trunk. Whoa, careful, it's a priceless antique. And it's empty. This is the same trunk Houdini used on his voyages to perform in Europe. But I bet he never had a traveling companion like this one. She can go the distance. The magician asks her to step into the trunk. Remarkably, she does. I wish he'd tell us that secret. Next, he closes the lid. Then pulls the trunk to the side. Now he uses the trunk to step up onto the table. Houdini probably wouldn't be too pleased about that. He motions for one of his assistants to return with a large sheet. The magician opens the sheet eventually and shows us that there's nothing hidden inside. Now watch carefully. He holds the sheet in front of him and slowly raises it up. He lowers the sheet to prove he's still there. He raises the sheet again, and when he lowers it, he's not alone. It's the girl from the trunk, in case you didn't recognize her. But he checks her out just to be sure. And now for the trunk. One of the other assistants returns and opens it. Presto, another girl. An incredible illusion, and now this guy's got a full house. Now the magician will present another classic illusion that has confounded audiences since it was invented in 1902. To perform it, he'll need the help of his lovely assistants. Here's one now. As always, she's eager to please. And here come two more. They're quite pleasing too. The magician casts a spell over his assistant, who immediately gets ready for action. The other assistants remove a sheet from a low bench, allowing her to take a seat. They raise the sheet as she stretches back and lies straight across the length of the bench. They cover her with the sheet and stand by while the magician continues to cast his spell. Watch. The girl is floating off the table. Higher and higher, she floats into the air. Below, the magician waves his arm to prove there's nothing supporting her. He takes the sheet and she's gone. Disappeared in midair by magic. Now you know why this illusion is a classic. This corrugated metal enclosure will be the site of the magician's first illusion tonight. As we can see, the enclosure is completely empty and free from magical gimmicks. Inside is an empty steel frame. Before the magician is a steel panel. It's also empty, solid, and free from gimmicks. Attached are these thick straps. When straps are securely attached to something, you know they'll be securely strapping someone. And here's that special someone now, the magician's beautiful assistant. She steps up onto the panel so that we can get a better look at her latest outfit. It's a nice one. Next, she gets down onto the panel and prepares to recline. The magician calls in 2 male assistants to help him. Apparently, she's more than he can handle. The assistants strap the girl to the panel, just as I suspected. At least she's dressed for it. Remember, there are no camera tricks involved. The magician checks the strap and does some conjuring while he's at it. He calls in 2 more assistants, and the 4 men lift the panel and carry it into the metal enclosure. They position the panel within the empty steel frame and lock it in place. We can see how tightly the girl is strapped down. He doesn't want her to get away. Next, the assistants remove the metal braces so that we have a clear view of the girl within the metal enclosure. Watch. The magician gives us another look at the girl, and for this, I'm grateful. He conjures a cloud of smoke. A flash. She's gone. The girl and the steel panel have vanished in an instant. But where did she go? We'll just have to wait for the magician to show us how it's done. So how did the magician make his lovely assistant vanish while suspended in midair? It's not a camera trick. Here are the secrets. For his first illusion tonight, the magician will present a giant version of a classic trick. To perform it, he'll use this large 3-sided screen. As we can see, the outside of the screen is green. When folded, the 3 sides form a triangle. We can also see that the screen is solid, with no hidden trapdoors and no one hiding behind or on either side. Now he calls for some backup. 2 male assistants enter to lend a hand. They unfold the screen so that we can see all 3 panels at the same time. Nothing unusual here. Now to rotate the screen. We can see that the opposite side is orange, and there's nothing unusual here either. On the magician's command, the men fold in the sides to again form a triangle. The triangle is rotated so we can see all 3 sides. It opens, and 2 beautiful girls appear from nowhere. The screen is opened so that we can see there's no one hiding on this side. Now it's rotated to show no one is on the other side. It's empty. Once again, the magician has his assistants fold the screen into a triangle, then rotate it to show all sides. It opens, and two more beautiful girls emerge from nowhere. An amazing way to double your pleasure and double your fun.
Without a doubt, Houdini was the greatest escape artist who ever lived. Since then, thousands of magicians have repeated his death-defying escapes. You're about to find out how they're done. The magician is put into a straitjacket. This is a real straitjacket, the kind you'd find at any good asylum. It would be virtually impossible for anyone to get out of it. The straps are securely fastened. Then the magician is loaded into a large box. As he struggles with the straitjacket, the lid is put into place. Now his assistants chain it down and drill it shut. The box is rigged with explosives. He has less than a minute to get out. Again, the obligatory dancing. You'll notice that the assistants are all dressed exactly alike. There's a reason for this. We'll tell you why in a minute. What appears to be a stick of dynamite is attached to the box. The fuse is lit. The tension is mounting. Our magician has only a few seconds left to get out. Even though the audience knows this is only an illusion, it's still pretty convincing. For a second, you actually think it could be real. But you've been fooled. He's not only escaped from the straitjacket in the box, he's now in a different part of the warehouse. You've now entered the warehouse. For his first trick, the masked magician will turn one of his assistants into a tiger. He'll begin by showing you what the illusion is supposed to look like. Then you'll see how it's actually done. It doesn't matter where you see these illusions performed. In a glitzy Vegas show, a big-budget television special, or a show like this where we've stripped away the fancy lasers and pyrotechnics. The tricks are all basically the same. The masked magician makes his entrance. It's important to remember that none of the illusions you will see have been achieved through camera tricks. The magician selects an assistant and puts her into the cage. The cage is then covered by a yellow curtain. There's a reason for this. You'll notice that in many of tonight's tricks, curtains or other obstructions are used to hide what's going on behind the scenes. This is when most illusions are actually pulled off. The cage is lifted into the air, making it impossible for anything or anyone to get in or out. All attention is now focused on the cage. Our magician strikes a dramatic pose. And when the curtains are removed, our assistant has been turned into a 500-pound tiger. It seems pretty magical, but obviously there has to be a logical explanation. You've probably seen the sword in the basket trick 1,000 times. Now we're going to show you how it's done. Our assistant brings out the basket and gets ready to climb inside. The magician claps his hands to signal the beginning of the illusion. First, the assistant is covered with a black curtain. You'll find out why in a minute. The magician pushes the assistant down into the basket. The lid is put in place and the swords are brought out. They are not fakes. They are real swords and they are very sharp. He drives the swords all the way through the basket. It seems that they are cutting into our assistant. But if that were true, not even Fox would show you that. Notice the artistry. He makes it appear as if he's plunging the swords right into his assistant. It now seems that there are too many swords in the basket for anyone to survive. One by one, the magician removes the swords from the basket. No blood. That's always a good sign. Once the swords are removed, the magician covers the basket with a black curtain. Then he steps inside. This is to try to convince you that the basket is empty. If you're wondering what happened to our assistant, you're about to find out. The magician steps out of the basket and... what's this? Could it be... Yes, it's our lovely assistant, without a scratch on her. How did our assistant avoid becoming a human shish kebab?